Hey there, this is Steve cutting in before the intro with just a quick announcement. I was doing a little bit of reckoning as I was finishing up the production for this episode, and I realized that this is the 200th episode of Errant Adventures. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has listened, who has shared the show, and who has supported me over the years. I really appreciate you. I would not have kept going for all of this time if I didn't have that support. So, yay, 200 episodes. It's kind of crazy to think, but I just wanted to make a note of that, and I hope you all enjoy the episode. Thanks. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 39 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, Sejana clears the remaining commandos from the common room of the Howlin' Wolf and fights with the commando leader, damaging several consoles on the bridge in the process. She defeats and captures the commando leader, and once satisfied that there's no more threat to the ship, the crew sets about taking stock of the damage. Minister Torvarius is prepared to abandon the wolf and find a different way to Cassida, but Sejana and Mac convince him to stick to their plan. With assistance from some of their engineers, Einar patches the wolf back together with enough durability to get back to Cassida. They leave in the evening and jump out of the Equilon system, on their way home. Space ripples and distorts as the Howlin' Wolf drops out of the jump. On the bridge, Ayati runs a quick scan of the system to check for other ships. As the seconds tick by, she rubs her thumb over the naval insignia tucked in her pocket, hoping for a stroke of good luck. Let's go ahead and ask the Oracle. Is there anything of note in this system? I'm going to say it's 50-50. 69. Well, that's a nice result. That means there is nothing interesting in this system, and therefore the scanner returns everything she would expect to see. An empty star system with a few uninhabitable planets and enough hydrogen simmering in that star to fuel them on to their next destination. Ayati lays in a course and thumbs on the shipcom. All clear. We'll scoop the star and be headed back out system by mid-afternoon. No one else is on the bridge, but she could almost swear she felt the release of a collectively held breath. To herself, she says, "Now, as long as it stays that way, we'll be right as a meteor shower." There is one more star system between them and Cassida, so let's go ahead and ask the Oracle again. This time, I'm going to say that it is unlikely. Now that they're one jump away from Cassida, I think the danger of stumbling across a hierarchy ship out hunting for them is a lot more scarce. 62 this time, also a no. That's finally some good news. Ayati lost count a couple years ago of how many arrivals into Cassida she's flown, but she knows one thing for sure. This is the most excited she's ever been to see the Cassidan naval detachment that protects the conduit's exit. Beside her, Einar squeezes her shoulder gently and lets out a breath. "It's good to be home," he says. Ayati can hear the exhaustion in his voice. There's a conversation they haven't had yet about what happens when they return the ship to Zhang Imports with a considerable amount of damage. Neither of them are ready for that conversation yet. "It really is," Ayati says. "For a little bit there, I doubted we'd ever see it again." "I had faith," Einar replies. "Faith in you, faith in Luciel. You're the best crew I've ever captained." There's a hitch in his voice, and he clears his throat. Ayati places a hand over his and says, "You're a good captain, Cap. I'm proud to fly with you." He clears his throat again and says,
Right, nice and easy back to Devonshire. I'll tell our guests we've arrived.
Sejana is sitting in the common room on her second cup of coffee when the wolf drops out of the jump. Modern Aster drives make the transition almost entirely seamless, but she's always been able to detect the slight shift in pressure as a ship leaves the conduit and returns to real space. Perhaps other technomancers feel the same, though she's never really asked. Einar exits the bridge and enters the common room, stopping when he sees her.
You're up early.
Shrugging, Sejana says, "Back in Casada, are we?" He nods.
I still can't believe you can tell when we downshift.
He crosses the room and grabs his own cup, dispensing coffee into it before turning back to her.
Our passengers awake?
I haven't seen them, but I'll send Mac a ping. I'm sure he'll join us shortly. Sejana stares down at the dark liquid in her cup and says, I'll find Ludin, or whatever his real name is, and I'll bring him to justice. Einar grimaces.
Look, it's not your fault. You told me to keep an eye on him. I guess I should have done a better job.
He rubs his eyes.
I don't know what I'm going to tell the boss about all this.
You'll work it out, Sejana says. You're bringing a tidy sum back. Einar sighs and inspects his cup. Sejana frowns and asks, There's more to it, isn't there?
It's fine, I'll sort it out.
Einar, Sejana leans forward. What aren't you telling me?
Mr. Zhang warned me that if there was more trouble aboard the Wolf, that you'd be off the ship.
His shoulders sag for a moment, then he clears his throat.
I'll square it with him.
Before Sejana can respond, Mac enters and says, Morning. Oh, good, coffee. All right, so we're in Casada. That's great news. Einar takes a breath and says,
Yes, we should be landing on Devonshire in a few hours.
I have a contact at the palace, Sejana says. I'll reach out and arrange for the minister to visit. Once he's safely there, our contract will be concluded. Einar and Ayati can get paid. Any chance you can pay them off book? Einar frowns as Mac looks between them and says, I think that can be arranged. After all, we didn't file any data chits with the starport before we left.
Luciel,
Einar warns. I'm just looking out for you and Ayati, she says, in case there is trouble. Mac looks between them again and says, What kind of trouble are we talking about?
There won't be any trouble, Einar says, and that money has to go through the official records on the ship. We don't have to say who the passengers were, but we're going to record that as income for the balance sheets.
Sejana opens her mouth to argue, but the captain raises a hand.
I'll not hear another word on it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be checking the cargo.
He moves past Mac and heads into the cargo hold. Once he's gone, Mac sits down and says, What was that all about? Sejana stares at the empty hatch and says, I'm afraid I've created a little too much trouble for Einar with the owner of this ship, and I'm trying to make it right for the two people who put their lives at risk. Ah, Mac says and sips his coffee. Sorry to hear that. Does that mean you might be available more after we land? There might be an additional contract in it for you. Sejana looks at him, thoughtful. Go on. After the Wolf lands at the Heraklion Interstellar Starport, Sejana clears the docking bay before allowing the minister and his guards to exit. To her surprise and relief, there aren't any assassins waiting for her. Not that she expects her quarrel with Verdun Consulting is finished, but if she can deliver the minister without getting shot at, she'll be happy. As they're loading up the drift car Mac hired, Einar exits the Wolf dressed in a well-tailored suit. Sejana hangs back for a moment and walks over to him as he descends the boarding ramp. He sees her coming and tries to put on a smile.
Ayati and I are going out for food and drinks later tonight to celebrate our return, he says. You should join us.
Sejana says, Einar. He waves a hand and says,
No need, Luciel. I've still got a lot of pull with Mr. Zhang, and I've brought back a full cargo hold and a surplus of rue. It's not your fault there was a firefight on the ship.
Sejana's silent for a few seconds, studying his face. Where's dinner?
Campaign cheese up on the sheer.
Einar grins at the look on her face.
Hey, we've been through hell the last few weeks. We've earned a fancy night out. Promise me you'll join us.
It's not usually my scene, but I suppose I can make an exception, she says. I'll have to buy something nice to wear.
Wear your combat armor for all I care, he says, as long as you show up.
There is a certain appeal in that, she replies. How'd you get a table?
A captain has to have a few connections, he replies with a wink. Looks like they're getting antsy. You better go.
Sejana looks back at the drift car where Mac is standing, impassive. She turns back to Einar and says, Einar, if it comes down to it, I would rather leave the wolf than see you lose your captaincy.
Go on, Lushale. Finish your contract, Einar says, patting her on the arm. Dinner, 2100.
She nods and heads towards the drift car, climbing in ahead of Mac. As it lifts away from the docking bay, she watches Einar square his shoulders and head towards the hyperrail. As the drift car approaches the palace, Sejana takes in the sights. Nestled at the heart of the governmental center of Davonshire, the Palace of Whispers has been the home of the Tsaranovsky family for thousands of years, making it one of the oldest royal edifices in the universe. The current Grand Duke is the 39th such ruler of Cassida, and he was a firm guiding hand to the Emperor and the Carnapraxian court before the downfall. He also commanded the fleet Falcon Squad was attached to through most of the Regular War, and though Sejana never met the man, she did have a front row seat to how he commanded. It's little wonder he held such sway in the old imperial structure, and why Cassida remains a bastion of safety and hope. At least, while he lives, the people of Cassida may feel as though the encroaching darkness of the downfall can be held at bay. The almost crystalline towers of the palace glitter in the mid-morning sun as the drift car descends to one of the landing pads and settles near a manicured garden hedge. A woman in palace livery waits as they exit the vehicle. Approaching, she bows to the minister and welcomes him to Cassida and to the palace. She invites them to follow her to their meeting room. As they walk, she gives a brief history of the things they see, including the gardens planted by the 13th Duchess, or the shifting patterned hall designed and built by the 27th Duke. As they enter a large open hall, she gestures around and says, "And this is the room that gives the palace its name. Designed by Tarvena Emethan, famous Duva architect, the acoustics of this room allow you to stand in one place and be able to whisper and be heard in a corresponding spot across the room. It has long been the pursuit of lovers and political conspirators to find those spots." She points up to the ceiling, which is made entirely of glass and seems to shift as they walk under it. Of course, the ceiling changes, which moves the whispering ways. As far as I'm aware, no one has ever found every way, though some have tried. They leave the hall behind and enter a labyrinthine series of corridors with offices and governmental functionaries moving to and fro. Sejana always assumed that most governmental work was done in the Parliament building, but clearly there's a dazzling amount of bureaucracy that supports the palace and the Grand Duke's work. They arrive at a large conference room which is already occupied by a half-dozen people who stand when they enter. Their guide introduces Minister Torvarius to the Minister of War, Arvesh Sital, who stands at the head of the table. A reed-thin man, he steps forward and shakes Torvarius' hand, welcoming him to Cassida. He introduces the woman to his right, Alexia Tualeski, First Admiral of the Cassidan Navy, as well as a handful of other aides. He gestures for the minister to sit, and the minister's guards are directed to chairs along the outer wall. Before Mac or Sejana can sit, the First Admiral steps around and extends a hand to each of them in turn. "I understand you're both ISS. Welcome. Join us at the table." Turning to Sejana, she says, "I believe I had the pleasure of commanding the Dusk when your squad was aboard. You all did good work." Sejana returns the handshake and says, "Congratulations on the promotion." There's a glint in her eye as the Admiral nods and says, "Let's speak after." "Yes, ma'am." Mac and Sejana sit on either side of Tavarius, and the questions begin. Zhang headquarters is bustling with activity when Einar arrives. He scans in and takes the lift up to the executive level. As he exits the lift, the administrator sees him and her brow crinkles ever so slightly. The knot in his stomach expands. In the time he's been with Zhang Imports, he has never seen Amaranth sport that particular expression. "Einar," she says by way of greeting, "Mr. Zhang is in a meeting, but he'll see you when he's available. Is there anything I can get for you?" He grunts.
"It's really that bad, huh?"
Amaranth offers him a sad half smile and says, "I'll let you know when Mr. Zhang is ready for you." Einar nods and finds a place to sit. 1 hour turns into 3 as he watches other captains come and go from the executive suite. A few of them offer him sympathetic glances, though most studiously ignore his presence. Captain Orbal of the Night Dancers stops and offers a hand and a few kind words. For the most part, Einar just sits and waits, unsure if Mr. Zhang is offering cruelty or kindness with this time to collect his thoughts. It seems as though everyone else is aware of his fate, so he only has to wait for it to be over. The 4th hour is about to begin when Amaranth steps around the desk and approaches, saying, "Mr. Zhang will see you now." Inhaling a deep breath, Einar stands, smooths his suit, and follows her to the suite entrance. As the door slides closed behind him, his eyes find their way to Mr. Zhang's desk, where the man is sitting, hands pressed together, seemingly deep in thought. He looks up and gestures towards the seat. "Einar, please sit. I've read over the reports you forwarded this morning, plus reports from the maintenance techs who checked over the damage. I warned you." Einar nods. "You did, sir." "I warned you and you told me no. There are benefits to having a liar aboard." He looks over at the quick screen hovering to his left. "You escaped a hierarchy fleet leaving Kraus by executing a dangerous jump. Got embroiled in a conflict between a mining corporation and its delinquent workers. Then somehow got involved with a minister being hunted by hierarchy agents, which led to my ship getting shot up. Oh, and your new hire just so happened to be a hierarchy agent who betrayed your crew and almost got you all killed. Does that about sum it up?" Einar says, "Respectfully, sir, the hierarchy fleet and the Gita Protectorate situation were unavoidable. Those aren't Luchelle's fault or mine. It was a mix of really bad luck, some good luck, and then more bad luck. I agree that taking on the minister was a risky decision, but we made a substantial chunk of rue from it, thanks to the secrecy required. As for Luden, yeah, he turned out to be a hierarchy agent, which I still can't quite wrap my head around. Why would he want a job as an engineer on a cargo transport if he had some deeper mission for the hierarchy?" He gestures at the quick screen. "As you can see, we brought back over 500,000 rue and profit from the run, without counting the returns on the Ecolonian cargo. It's not a bad haul, considering the adversity we faced. Adversity that was mostly navigated successfully because of that liar we've got aboard." Mr. Zhang sits back and steeples his fingers. "I hear what you're saying, Einar, and I do appreciate the challenges you faced on this run, but the profit you've returned will mostly go to repairing the Howlin' Wolf. Not to mention you brought back damaged goods from Equilon. Our vendors get a little squeamish when there are laze bolt marks and dents in their crates. Luchelle might have helped you get out of those scrapes, but the point is, Einar, I don't want my captains getting into scrapes that can be avoided. I acknowledge the timing with the hierarchy attack on Kraus was unfortunate. I'm very glad that you successfully escaped, but you could have destroyed the ship in the attempt. If you'd stayed on the planet, the hierarchy may have let you go. I'm sure the liar pushed you to leave, and rightly so, they wouldn't have let her go." Frowning, Einar says, "It was my decision to leave Kraus.
And our ship wasn't the only one. You saw the news out of Sembria. It's not usually a peaceful takeover. And with Cassidon idents, we probably would have ended up in a work camp.
Mr. Zhang raises his hand. Be that as it may, it was the liar's contract with the minister that precipitated the most damage to my ship. No, you may try to defend her, but I told you once already, I would hold you responsible for any further trouble that came from her presence on my ship. It gives me no pleasure to do so, but I hereby strip you of your command of the Howlin' Wolf. In honor of your service, I'm offering you a severance package that I believe is quite generous. He waves a hand to send the contract to Einar's queue and stands. Einar also stands and says,
Mr. Zhang, I believe you're making a mistake. We've been a profitable crew, and these misadventures shouldn't be held against us.
Mr. Zhang shakes his head. I understand it is an unfortunate decision, but I provided you the parameters within which I expect my captains to serve. Efficiency is key, and this run is rife with inefficiencies. First and foremost, the presence of that liar. I'm a man of my word, and I'm holding you responsible for the damage done to my ship. I'm not heartless, Einar. The Wolf will need a week or so of repairs, and you and the liar have 3 days to pack your things and vacate the ship before Captain Dorless takes command. Thank you for your time. He extends his hand, and Einar takes it without thought. They shake, and the door slides open behind him. Frustration bubbles in Einar's chest as he releases Mr. Zhang's hand and turns to leave. The man did warn him that any disturbances caused by having Luciel aboard would fall on his head, but there had been a part of Einar that believed Mr. Zhang would see the misfortune and effort they had all taken to return with a profit. As he exits the room, Amaranth stands waiting, with a pair of security officers lingering behind her. An almost more cruel insult. Einar glowers at them. Amaranth meets him on this side of the door and says, This way, Einar, I'll escort you downstairs.
Worried I might tear up the place, he growls,
and she blushes, waving the security officers back. I'm sorry, it's standard policy.
Right.
She has the courtesy to close the lift doors without inviting security in with them, and the two descend to the main level in silence. Einar doesn't say goodbye as he walks out of the lift and through the exit doors onto the main concourse. He doesn't even look back as he boards the hyperrail back to the spaceport. It's not until the business district is out of sight that he closes his eyes and lowers his face into his hands. Tashin Vorl steps up to the reader under the Wellston Transport logo and swipes his cue. It chimes and his picture appears on the quick screen embedded in the wall. Beneath it, a name, Olthen Hart, displays along with the words, Shift concluded. The light turns green, and he turns to walk away. A meaty hand falls on his shoulder, and he glances up at Dove, the massive maintenance tech who spent most of the last 2 days showing him the ropes. Dove grins at him and says,
You're getting the hang of this, Olthen. Now that the work is done, it's time for a drink. Join us down at the Hazard Pay. First round's on me.
Tashin Vorl nods, but as the big man forges on ahead, the smile slips and he thinks about the work ahead. Momentarily distracted by a stray thought about poor Ayadi's fate, he shakes his head, struggling to focus. That is all in the past. The only thing that matters is the mission. You all right? Dove asks, giving him an appraising look. Yeah, Olthen Hart says. Everything's great, just a lot to learn. But like you said, the workday is done. Let's go get that drink. The big man claps him on the back and says,
That's the spirit. You'll fit right in.
And the two of them exit the large warehouse building onto the bustling street in Devonshire's Southern Warehouse District. And on the way down the road, to the hazard pay. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.